The rain hammered against the palace windows like 1,000 tiny fists. Sergeant James Whitmore stood at his post, eyes scanning the darkness beyond the iron gates. 23 years he'd served the crown. 23 years of silence, discipline, and duty. But nothing had prepared him for what would happen on this cold November night. The radio crackled to life at exactly 11:47 p.m. Code Amber. This is not a drill. His blood ran cold. Code Amber meant one thing: a credible threat against a member of the royal family. James's hand instinctively moved to his sidearm as he watched 3 black SUVs speed through the gates. Their tires screaming against the wet pavement. Inside the second vehicle sat Catherine, Princess of Wales, returning early from a charity event. Intelligence had intercepted communications about a possible security breach along her planned route. The decision was made in seconds. Bring her home immediately. James had seen the princess many times before. Always gracious, always composed. But tonight, through the tinted windows, he caught a glimpse of something different. Fear. Not for herself, he would later realize, but for her children, sleeping soundly inside the palace walls. The convoy stopped. Doors opened. Security personnel moved with practiced precision, surrounding the princess as they escorted her toward the entrance. That's when James saw her glance back toward the guards at the gate. Just a brief look, but it carried weight. Gratitude, recognition, trust. The next 72 hours blurred together. Extra guards were posted at every entrance. Patrols doubled. Sleep became a luxury no one could afford. James stood watch for 16 hours straight, his feet aching, his eyes burning from exhaustion. But he never wavered. Other guards joined him in rotation. Young Marcus Chen, just 6 months into service, trying to hide his nervousness. Elena Kowalski, a former military officer who'd seen combat in Afghanistan. David Thompson, whose father and grandfather had both served the royal household. They were different people from different places, but they shared one purpose: protect the family inside those walls. On the second night, as fog rolled across the grounds like ghostly fingers, James noticed something. Lights in the children's wings stayed on longer than usual. He imagined Princess Charlotte, only 8 years old, perhaps sensing the tension in the palace, unable to sleep. If you're finding this story moving, consider subscribing. These real emotional moments deserve to be shared. The threat was neutralized on the 3rd day. An arrest made quietly, far from public eyes. The palace slowly exhaled. Normal routines resumed. The extra guards returned to their regular posts, but something had changed. For days after the incident, James received an unusual summons. He was to report to the Rose Garden at 3 p.m. No explanation given. Just the instruction. He arrived early, uniform pressed to perfection, boots polished until they gleamed. Elena and Marcus were already there, looking equally confused. David arrived moments later. Any idea what this is about? Marcus whispered. Before anyone could answer, a door opened. But it wasn't the princess who emerged. It was Charlotte. The young princess walked with quiet confidence, her mother a few steps behind. Charlotte wore a simple blue dress, her hair pulled back neatly. But what caught James's attention was what she carried: a small wooden box, polished and clearly precious. The guard stood straighter, if that was even possible. James felt his heart hammering beneath his uniform. In all his years of service, he'd never been addressed directly by any of the children. Protocol was clear: they speak, you respond with utmost respect. They don't speak, you remain invisible. Charlotte stopped 3 feet away. Her eyes moved from one guard to the next, studying each face with an intensity that seemed far beyond her 8 years. James noticed her hands gripping the box a little tighter. The Princess of Wales stood back, letting her daughter take the lead. There was something deliberate about this moment, something planned. "Mummy told me what happened," Charlotte said finally. Her voice was soft, but steady. She said you stayed awake for days, that you protected us when bad people wanted to hurt her. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Elena's jaw tightened. David stared straight ahead, but James saw the emotion flickering in his eyes. She said, "Some of you have families at home." Children like me? But you stayed here instead. The garden was silent except for the distant sound of traffic beyond the palace walls. A bird called from somewhere in the trees. The autumn sun filtered through the clouds, casting long shadows across the manicured lawn. Charlotte opened the box. Inside, nestled in blue velvet, were 4 coins. They weren't ordinary coins. Each was roughly the size of a poker chip, made of polished brass with intricate engravings. James could see the royal cipher on one side, but he couldn't make out the other details from where he stood. My mummy had these made special, Charlotte continued. She wanted to give them herself, but I asked if I could do it. Because I wanted to say thank you, too. She approached Alina first, perhaps because she was closest. The guard's professional mask cracked just slightly as Charlotte held out the coin. Thank you for keeping my mummy safe, Charlotte said, pressing the coin into Elena's gloved hand. Elena's voice caught. It's my honor, Your Royal Highness. Charlotte moved to David next. The older guard, who'd served longer than Charlotte had been alive, accepted the coin with trembling fingers. James saw a tear escape down David's weathered cheek before he could stop it. Marcus was third. The young guard bent slightly at the knee, bringing himself closer to Charlotte's height as she placed the coin in his palm. You're very brave, she told him. Marcus tried to speak, but couldn't. He simply nodded. Then Charlotte turned to James. Their eyes met, and in that moment, he understood something profound. This child born into unimaginable privilege and responsibility already understood the weight of service. She understood sacrifice. Sergeant Whitmore, she said, reading the name from his uniform. Mummy says you've been here since before I was born. 23 years, Your Highness, James managed. That's longer than my whole life. She smiled, a genuine smile that lit up her entire face. Thank you for all of it. For every day, she placed the final coin in his hand. It was warm from being held. James looked down at it properly for the first time. The engraving showed the palace gates with the words circling the edge. For extraordinary service in the protection of the crown. On the reverse was a personal message in elegant script. With deepest gratitude, Catherine, but there was something else. Something that made James's throat tighten. A small flower was engraved in the corner. A rose. The same rose that grew in this very garden where they stood. The Princess of Wales stepped forward then, her presence bringing a new weight to the moment. She looked at each guard individually, her eyes conveying what words sometimes couldn't. These coins are not just tokens, she said quietly. They're a promise. A promise that what you did, what you do every single day is seen, is valued, is remembered. James felt the coin growing heavier in his hand, though its physical weight hadn't changed. He'd received commendations before, medals, official letters, but this felt different. This was personal. I need you to understand something, Catherine continued. When I got into that car 4 nights ago, when I saw the fear in my security team's faces, my first thought wasn't for myself. It was for my children. For Charlotte, George, and Louis sleeping upstairs, unaware that anything was wrong. Her voice wavered slightly. The professional composure slipped for just a second, revealing the mother underneath. I knew that if something happened to me, they would wake up to a different world. A world I couldn't protect them from anymore. That thought terrified me more than any threat ever could. Charlotte moved closer to her mother, instinctively seeking comfort. Catherine's hand found her daughter's shoulder. But then I remembered who stood between my children and any danger. I remembered the guards at every door, every window, every gate. People like you 4. People who chose this life, knowing the risks, accepting the sacrifice. Alina stood perfectly still, but James could see her chest rising and falling with controlled breaths. Marcus had tears streaming openly now, no longer trying to hide them. David's weathered face had softened into something James had rarely seen, vulnerability. That night, I slept knowing my children were safe. Not because of walls or cameras or protocols. Because of you. Because of the human beings who stood watch while my family dreamed. The afternoon sun broke through the clouds fully now, bathing the garden in golden light. Somewhere in the distance, James could hear children laughing. Normal life continuing, protected by invisible hands. My daughter wanted to give you these personally because I've taught her something important, Catherine said. I've taught her that kindness isn't just about grand gestures. It's about seeing people, really seeing them, acknowledging their humanity, their sacrifice. Charlotte nodded, understanding far more than most children her age could grasp. You could have chosen easier paths, the princess continued. Jobs with normal hours, less danger, more recognition. But you chose this. You chose to be the silent protectors. The ones nobody sees until something goes wrong. She paused, collecting herself. I see you. My family sees you. And we are grateful beyond words. The formal part of the ceremony seemed to be ending, but Charlotte wasn't finished. She looked up at her mother, asking a silent question. Catherine nodded. Can I tell them the other part? Charlotte asked. Of course, darling. Charlotte turned back to the guards, her young face serious. I asked Mummy, what makes someone brave? She said brave isn't not being scared. Brave is being scared and doing it anyway. She looked at each guard in turn. You were scared that night, weren't you? When the alarms went off and the cars came fast? Marcus nodded before he could stop himself. It was the truth. But you stayed. You protected us even though you were scared. That's what real brave is. Something broke open in James's chest. This child, this 8-year-old princess, had somehow understood what many adults never grasped. She'd seen past the uniforms and the protocols to the beating hearts underneath. I'm going to be brave like you someday, Charlotte said firmly. When I grow up and have to do hard things, I'm going to remember that being scared is okay. What matters is staying anyway. Catherine's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Pride radiated from her like warmth from a fire. The moment stretched, suspended in time. 4 guards, 1 princess, 1 future queen. Standing in a garden, while the world spun on outside the palace walls, then Charlotte did something completely unexpected. She stepped forward and hugged Alina. Protocol shattered like glass. Guards weren't hugged. They weren't touched beyond formal handshakes on rare occasions. They were statues, fixtures, part of the architecture, but Elena's arms came around the small princess instinctively. The way any human being would hold a child. Her shoulders shook once, just once, before she regained control. Thank you, Charlotte whispered against Elena's uniform. For being brave for us. When they separated, Elena's eyes were bright but clear. Always, Your Highness, always. Charlotte moved to David next, then Marcus, then finally to James. Each embrace was brief but genuine. Each one broke through years of training that said maintain distance, stay professional, don't feel. But how could they not feel? When Charlotte's small arms wrapped around James's waist, he smelled her lavender shampoo and felt the warmth of her trust. His hand came to rest gently on her back, just for a moment. 23 years of service crystallized into this single point of connection. Thank you for protecting my whole life, she said, even the parts I don't remember. His voice came out rough. It has been my greatest honor. Catherine allowed the moment to breathe before speaking again. These coins are meant to be carried, she said, not displayed in a case or locked away. They're reminders that you're part of something larger than duty. You're part of our family's story, our children's safety, their future. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a 5th coin. Identical to the others, but this one she held differently. More carefully. This one is mine, she said. I carry it every day. In my purse, in my pocket, wherever I go. When I attend events or travel, or simply go about my day, I feel its weight. I remember what it represents. She turned the coin over in her fingers, catching the light. It reminds me that I'm never truly alone. That good people stand ready to put themselves between my family and harm. That service still means something in this world. Marcus wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, no longer caring about appearance. David's jaw worked silently, decades of British stoicism battling with raw emotion. Alina stood straighter if possible, chin up but eyes soft. James felt the coin in his pocket, already a part of him. There's one more thing, Catherine said. Charlotte wanted to add a personal touch to each coin. something unique. If you look very carefully at the rose engraving, you'll see tiny initials. James pulled his coin back out, squinting at the delicate flower. There, almost invisible, unless you knew to look, were the letters CEMW, Charlotte Elizabeth Marion Wales. I helped design them, Charlotte explained proudly. Mummy showed me how to draw what I wanted, and the coin maker put it exactly where I asked. So now, you'll always know they're from me too, not just from her. The garden seemed to hold its breath. A breeze rustled the rose bushes, carrying the scent of late-blooming flowers. In the distance, a clock tower chimed 4 times. We should let you return to your duties, Catherine said gently. But before you go, I want you to know something else. You 4 aren't the only ones receiving these coins. Over the next week, 23 guards will be called to this garden. Every person who worked extra hours during those 3 days, every person who sacrificed sleep and time with their own families. She paused, making sure they understood. But you 4 were first, because you were at the front gate when I arrived home. You were the faces I saw when I was most afraid. You were the wall between chaos and my children's peace. Charlotte took her mother's hand, and together they looked like what they were. 2 human beings, royal titles aside, expressing genuine gratitude. Go home tonight, Catherine said. Hold your own families a little tighter. Tell them what this meant to you. Let them know that their sacrifice, sharing you with this service, is seen and appreciated too. James thought of his wife, Margaret, waiting at home with dinner, probably cold by now. His daughter, Emma, away at university, who sometimes complained that her father loved the crown more than his own family. He would tell them both about this day. He would show them the coin. He would help them understand. Your Highnesses, Elena said formally, finding her voice again. We don't serve for recognition. We serve because it matters. Because you matter. I know, Catherine replied softly. That's exactly why this matters so much. The meeting was ending. Everyone could feel it. But nobody wanted to move, wanted to break whatever spell had been cast in this garden. Finally, Charlotte stepped back, standing straight like she'd been taught. A miniature reflection of her mother's grace. When I'm older, she said, when it's my turn to be like Mummy, I'm going to remember this day. I'm going to remember that the people who protect us have hearts and families and fears just like everyone else. She looked at each guard one final time, and I'm going to make sure they know they're heroes. Not because they wear uniforms or carry weapons, but because they choose love over fear, service over comfort, duty over ease. 8 years old, and already understanding what some never learn in a lifetime. The guards saluted in perfect unison, a gesture of respect they'd performed thousands of times. But this time felt sacred. This time, it meant something beyond protocol. Catherine and Charlotte turned to leave. But the princess stopped at the garden gate. She looked back one final time. The coins have one other feature, she said. On very close inspection, you'll find a date engraved along the inner rim. November 14th, the night everything changed. The night we were reminded what courage really looks like. Then they were gone, disappearing into the palace that had stood for centuries, that would stand for centuries more, protected by people who would never appear in history books. The 4 guards stood in silence for a long moment. The weight of what had just happened settled over them like snow. Did that really just occur? Marcus finally whispered. David laughed, a sound somewhere between joy and disbelief. 27 years I've served. 27 years. And I've never experienced anything like that. Elena turned her coin over in her hands, studying Charlotte's initials. My daughter is Charlotte's age, she said quietly. 8 years old. When I left for my shift that night, she asked why I had to go. I told her some things are more important than bedtime stories. She looked up, eyes distant. She cried. Said I loved my job more than her. I've carried that guilt every day since. But now I have this. Proof that the sacrifice means something. That I'm not just abandoning my child for a paycheck. James understood. They all did. The invisible cost of service that families paid, that children paid, that marriages sometimes couldn't survive. My son asked me the same thing, David said. Years ago, before he stopped asking, before he stopped expecting me at his football matches or school plays, I lost moments with him that I can never get back. His voice cracked. But children like Charlotte, like the princes, they got to grow up safe. They got to sleep peacefully while their parents traveled, while dangers lurked, because people like us stood watch. That has to count for something. It has to. Marcus fingered his coin carefully. I almost quit last month, he admitted. The hours, the pressure, the constant vigilance. I thought maybe I wasn't cut out for this, that I'd made a mistake. He shook his head, smiling through tears. But she saw me. An 8-year-old princess saw me, saw all of us, and understood what we give up. How is that possible? Because Catherine is teaching her, James said. Teaching her that titles don't make you better than anyone else. That the person cleaning the floors or standing guard in the rain is just as valuable, just as worthy of respect. He thought about all the times he'd seen the princess interact with staff. The way she remembered names, asked about families, noticed when someone looked tired or troubled. She was raising her daughter the same way. The world needs more of that, Elena said. More recognition that we're all human, that we all matter. They stood together as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Somewhere inside the palace, dinner was being prepared. Children were doing homework. Life continued its ordinary rhythm. But for these 4 guards, nothing would be ordinary again. James eventually broke the silence. We should record this. What happened here? Not for publicity or recognition, but so our families know. So our children understand why we do what we do. My wife won't believe it, David chuckled. She'll think I've finally lost my mind from too many night shifts. Mine will cry, Elena said. Happy tears. She's always said the family deserves to know how much they're appreciated. Now I have proof. Marcus pulled out his phone, then stopped. Wait, are we allowed to photograph these? Is that protocol? James considered. They told us to carry them. To show our families. I think we're meant to share this story. They gathered close for guards who'd started the day as colleagues and ended it as something more. Brothers and sisters in arms, bound by an experience that transcended duty. David held out his phone at arm's length. Smile, he said. Or don't. Just be present. The photo captured 4 faces still in uniform holding brass coins that caught the fading sunlight. Behind them, the palace rose against the darkening sky, windows beginning to glow with interior light. It wasn't a professional photograph. The composition was off-center, David's thumb partially blocking the lens. But it was real. It was theirs. Thank you, Marcus said suddenly. To all of you? For being here. For understanding what this meant. We're family now, Elena said simply. The coin bearers. That's what we'll call ourselves. The ones who were there when a princess taught the world about gratitude. James liked that. The coin bearers. It had a nice ring to it. They separated slowly, reluctantly, each returning to their duties. But everything felt different now. The palace walls seemed less imposing. The uniform felt less like a costume and more like a badge of honor. As James walked back to his post at the front gate, he reached into his pocket every few steps, making sure the coin was still there. Making sure this hadn't been a dream. That evening, as James's shift finally ended, he drove home through London traffic with the coin resting on the passenger seat. Every red light gave him another chance to pick it up, to feel its weight, to trace Charlotte's initials with his fingertip. Margaret was waiting in the kitchen when he arrived, concern etched on her face. You're late again, she said, trying to keep the frustration from her voice. Dinner's ruined. James said nothing. He simply walked to her, took her hand, and placed the coin in her palm. What is this? She asked, confused. Open your hand. Look at it properly. Margaret held it to the light, reading the inscription. Her eyes widened. James, what is this? Where did you get this? The Princess of Wales had them made. For the guards who protected her family during the security threat last week. Princess Charlotte gave it to me herself. In the rose garden. She hugged me, Margaret. She thanked me for protecting her whole life. His wife's eyes filled with tears. She hugged you? All of us. For guards. She's 8 years old, and she understood sacrifice better than most adults I've met. She knew we have families who miss us, children who need us. She saw us as people, not just uniforms. Margaret sat down heavily, still clutching the coin. 23 years, she whispered. 23 years of missed dinners and solo holidays and sleeping alone because you're on night duty. I've resented it, James. God help me. I've resented the crown for taking you away so much. I know. But this, she held up the coin, this makes it real. This proves it wasn't for nothing. That someone noticed. Someone cared. James sat beside his wife, and they cried together. Release for all the years of sacrifice. Validation for all the choices they'd made. Later that night, James called his daughter Emma at university. I know you've been angry with me, he said, for missing your graduation, your birthday, all those important moments. Dad, we don't have to do this now. I have something to tell you. Something that happened today that I need you to understand. He told her everything. Every detail. The ceremony. Charlotte's words. The coin with the princess's initials. Emma was silent for a long time. She's 8. Emma finally said. 8 years old? And she understood all that? About sacrifice and families and service? She did. Because her mother is teaching her right. Teaching her that everyone matters, regardless of title or position. Emma's voice came soft over the phone. I'm sorry, Dad, for all the times I said you cared more about them than me. I didn't understand. I was just a kid who wanted her father home. You had every right to feel that way. I missed too much of your life. But Emma, knowing that children like Charlotte get to grow up safe, get to have normal childhoods without fear, that's what kept me going. That's what it was all for. I get it now, Emma said. I really do. Can I see the coin when I come home next weekend? I'll be carrying it with me, James promised. Every day. It's yours to see whenever you want. Over the following weeks, the story spread quietly through the palace staff. 23 guards total received coins, each ceremony as personal and emotional as the first. But the original 4, the ones Charlotte approached first, remained connected. They met for coffee once a month, comparing notes on how the coins had changed their lives. David's son had asked to hear the story 5 times, finally understanding why his father's work mattered. Marcus carried his coin to a job interview at a private security firm, then turned down the position because he realized he was exactly where he needed to be. Elena's daughter had written a school essay about her mother, titled My Hero, citing the coin as evidence that even princesses recognized true courage. 6 months after the ceremony, James was standing at his usual post when a familiar car pulled through the gates. Catherine was inside, heading out for an engagement. As the vehicle slowed, the window lowered slightly. The princess caught his eye and touched her pocket where James knew her own coin rested. A small gesture. A private acknowledgement between 2 people who understood what service meant. James touched his pocket in return. The coin was there, warm against his chest, always. The car pulled away, and James returned to his vigil. The rain had started again, just like that night months ago. But this time there was no fear. No alarms, just the steady rhythm of duty. A tourist couple approached the gate, cameras ready, looking for the perfect shot of the guards in their formal uniforms. Do they ever move? The woman wondered aloud. Do they ever feel anything, standing there like statues? James wanted to laugh. If only they knew. If only they understood that beneath every uniform stood a person with a coin in their pocket and a story in their heart. A person who'd been seen, truly seen, by an 8-year-old princess who understood that gratitude changes everything. The tourists took their photos and moved on. James remained at his post, guardian of a family that had given him more than he could ever repay. Not through salary or benefits or official commendations, but through a simple gesture that said, "You matter. Your sacrifice matters. You are part of our story." As the evening sky darkened and lights began to glow in the palace windows, James thought about Charlotte. She would be doing homework now, or perhaps reading before bed. Growing up in a world that would ask much of her, It's prepared by a mother who is teaching her that true nobility isn't about bloodline or title. It's about recognizing the humanity in everyone, about saying thank you, about making small brass coins that change lives. James reached into his pocket one more time, feeling the familiar weight. Tomorrow he would stand here again, and the day after that, and all the days to come. But now he would stand different, knowing that somewhere in those palace walls, a young princess carried the same weight in her pocket, remembering the guards who'd been brave when it mattered most. The rain fell harder. James didn't move. He never would. Because some duties aren't just about protocol or paychecks. Some duties are about love, about protecting something precious, about being the silent wall between innocence and darkness. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, someone notices. Someone says thank you. Someone makes you a coin with a rose and initials and a promise. You are seen, you are valued, you matter. That's the real crown. The one no ceremony can bestow and no inheritance can claim. The crown of service, worn by those who stand watch while others sleep. James stood straighter, rain dripping from his cap, coin warm against his heart, ready for whatever came next.